manager for St. Peter's College. So I'm involved in a lot of online websites, any online digital resources, and been using Zoom for our church and for various things like quizzes. Done an online quiz and work, so use Zoom a lot. So pretty much been on Zoom every day since we went into lockdown. So I've worked my way around it, and also been involved in just putting this presentation together with John, and a little bit on licensing as well, as to what licensing requirements are required for streaming and websites, and putting your services online also. So I know a little bit about that now.
Thanks very much, Graham. And just as a part of the welcome, really, as I've already hinted, I'm not an expert by any means. I'm still very much a beginner. And so the idea is to share some ideas, and it may be that some of you have been using Zoom as a platform and actually know things that we don't, certainly that I don't. And in a way, I thought actually not being an expert might well be helpful, because sometimes when you go to a workshop online, or you look at a video on YouTube and there's somebody going, you know, you do this and you shift that there and it whizzes this round, and you think, whoa, 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 what did you do? Well, you won't get any of that, not from me anyway. So it's sometimes it's helpful to see it sort of with people wrestling their way through, and also maybe also I don't use its full potential, full capacity yet, but I use something that works, you know, and it may be that that's helpful for people, and that's a good sort of starting point. We will have notes that we can send after the event, or we may be able to share the file during the session with people. Graham's got a couple of things that he's produced we can send that will sort of summarize stuff. So is sound basically okay for people? Can you all hear all right? Volume's okay? Good. I don't think I've got any video clips, so you won't get blasted out. But we will probably mute people at various points for different bits of presentation, because sometimes it's just easier. Okay, I think that's probably that. I need to hand over to Graham for setting up the meeting. Now I think, Graham,
yes,
I can find you that I go to more and make you the host, don't I?
Yeah, you can either make, well,
I'll try that.
You can make me the host and then I can share screen.
There you go. I think I've made you the host. I haven't done that before, so there we are. We're learning all the time.
Well, we'll find out if that's... Yes, I can now share my screen. So what I'll do is I'll just share the screen. Let me know if you can see that. It should just have an opening slide. Can we see that, John? Tell me if that's...
I can, yeah.
Okay.
I haven't actually muted everybody. Hang on, let me...
No, that's fine.
I've lost my controls.
So
you're a host now, so okay.
We've divided the session up into a number of sections. So we're going to try not to hop about too much from one subject matter to another. However, there will be a little bit of that, and we'd really like, as John said, to hear from you about either your ideas that you've already used Zoom for, or your ideas of how you could use Zoom, or any questions that you've got. We'll try and leave a lot of space for that, and hopefully it will last about an hour because of something called Zoom fatigue, which we all feel. Apparently it's something to do with, I don't know, somebody said it's something to do with the facial muscles, and that's, but I don't know exactly what Zoom fatigue is, but I know it's real and does exist, so we'll try and keep it short. So just moving on to the next slide. This is sections entitled Setting Up the Meeting, and it's just really a case of making sure that people know about the meeting. I know it seems obvious, but it's ways of being able to do that. So I've got a few slides, a few pointers, and then John can maybe add a few more things. But when you go into Zoom, you'll see this, and obviously you get that schedule a meeting option, as well as create a meeting and new meeting, that sort of thing. When you do that, you get this sort of screen where you can make the changes, and you can add on the date, obviously, the duration, and then you can also put in, create advanced options like enable waiting room, like enable people to join before the host. And we do suggest further on in the sessions that perhaps you set a waiting room, because then it allows you to get all set up and ready for people before they start wading in. And quite a lot of people, you know, rightly so, they'll come early and they'll try and get in. And if you're not set up, then it just feels a bit stressed, and then you have to talk to them. And probably you know that I'm not, you can hear already, I'm not a pastoral person. But yeah, you do have to talk to them. But not because you don't want to talk to them, because you're setting up and they might distract you. But you can also mute participants on entry, etc. You can see the settings there, and you can make people hosts if you set the settings correctly in your browser, which again we'll explain, if you haven't done that, where those settings are later. This is just something I did yesterday, so that's why I'm not moving. If you want to find out when you go into the meeting, if you just say set up a new meeting rather than schedule a meeting, which you can then set, so this is all about getting the information to send to people. You can click on that little info button in the top left where the red ring is, and it gives you the meeting ID and the password and a link. So you can copy all that, copy and paste it, and put it into an email or into a WhatsApp message, or whatever, however you're going to tell people about this. And also, there's, if you click on, I've highlighted in red with the little circles. So you click on participants at the bottom, then click on invite, and you get that option of copy the invite or invitation. When you copy the invitation, you get this, and I think for me, it's just too much to just send raw like that. So I tend to strip out all that bottom bit and just send, you could just send the link and that should be okay, but I find sending the meeting ID, password and link out really helpful, because all that allows people who maybe receive it on their phone but want to join on the laptop, and they can put the meeting ID and password in by hand, and so it's accessible from wherever you are and whatever device you're using. So I would suggest to use a password, partly because of security, partly there's a licensing issue. If you use a password, then there are occasions, which we'll explain later, that means that if you use a password, then you don't need a broadcast license. But as I say, we'll explain the nuances of that later on. It also protects against Zoom bombing. Would probably suggest you not putting the link and the meeting ID, say, on a Facebook page or on a website, only because, I mean, John, you can say a bit more, but I think there have been examples, certainly in our experience, of people we know, of people coming into meetings and causing a little bit of chaos, which is officially maybe known or unofficially known as Zoom bombing. And you don't want unwanted visitors. And so what you can do is you can say there's a meeting, there's we're going to send out a meeting ID, and then when you can get people to contact you by email or WhatsApp or however they connect with you by text, then you can send them the link details direct, or maybe ask a few questions like, who are you and why do you want to join our thing? And obviously we want to be as open as much as possible to people joining our church services and meetings, but we also have to be careful and protective of who joins within reason. Advise attendees, unlike myself who didn't do this, to try and log in 10 minutes early. The only reason I was late is because my computer decided to do loads of updates and I turned it off. And those are the sorts of things that can happen if you don't advise people to arrive early. Obviously, if they've done Zoom before lots of times, then you get a bit blasé and you just log in with seconds to spare. But generally advise people, just because of all the testing, the check-in, the logging in, and maybe even having to download Zoom for the first time. And maybe it's just a suggestion, maybe organise a time if you've got quite a small group of people that you're going to be connecting with, to organise a time where you say, right, in this hour or 2 hours or something, please contact me, try to set up Zoom, we can go through Zoom together, you know, for those who are a bit unsure. So you could do that. It might not be practical, but that's a suggestion. So that was the first section. You want to chip in there, John, and add any and ask for any comments or whatever?
Yeah, fine. Do you want to stop sharing your screen and then we'll see whether better for people, and you can transfer back to me as host as you like. Welcome. I think Stephen has joined us. I noticed. Welcome. So just a couple of comments on things that Graham mentioned. The Zoom bombing, we have had one instance of that in our diocese. I think you'll have seen it in one of the updates. There is actually a second way to protect against that, which possibly this person hadn't put into place, which is that you make sure that the only people who can share screen, we're going to explain what that is in a minute, are the hosts. I think there must have been a situation there where anybody could share their screen. What basically happened was that somebody joined the meeting, had something pornographic on their screen, hit share screen, and everybody gets it. Now, fortunately, the person who was hosting was very vigilant and basically shut the meeting down instantly. So it didn't really affect anyone, but it was unpleasant. And you wouldn't think that people would bother hovering around a service in a relatively small church and do this, but there are obviously people who've got nothing better to do. So it's just something to be aware of. It's one of the weaknesses, it seems to me, of Zoom, is that in one sense, Zoom ends up being a platform for insiders in a way. The nice thing is the interaction, but it's different if you post a service on Facebook, you might get 500 people watching it, you know, a lot of whom don't normally come to your church, and you think, well, that's brilliant, but of course you've no interaction. So it's kind of swings and roundabouts. Probably the best thing to do, and I haven't done this yet because I wasn't quite sure about the licensing issues, but Graham's going to go through that later. The best thing to do is to have your Zoom service, record it, and then put it up for other people to see. That way outsiders can see, just as they would if you posted a service, that you don't have the issues that you might get. So it's just a bit tricky on that one. In terms of inviting people to arrive early, there's two things I would say about that. One is before we had our first service, we had an evening sort of prayer and Zoom session. So there was a bit of prayer, but it was also about just making sure people got on, and then people going, I can't find my video, or I can't hear anybody, you know, and it was sort of saying, well, you press that button. So you went through all that before they got to a service. And then actually people have been pretty good, I think. The only problem we've had is people who don't realize that you can hear them. So we've had an older couple on who I'm sure would never swear in church. But the first time they come on, they said, oh, it's so loud, turn it down. Oh, I can't find the stupid little buttons. I think we can all hear you, so you just hit mute. But they've no idea that this is happening. They did it again this week. So, and we tended initially, because we had the free Zoom, we didn't arrive early because you had your 40 minutes. So what we did was set up 2 meetings, one after the other. And then if we overran, we just got everybody to log on. Well, they got kicked out and then log on again. And then we finished our meeting in the second meeting. So we didn't really want to waste any of those minutes. So I kind of set up the meeting about 2 minutes to go. But now we've got a paid for account, and it is only, I think including VAT, it's something like 14 quid a month. It's not very much. We now don't worry. So we do log on 10 minutes early. And we actually don't have people come silently. We allow all the microphones on at the beginning. I haven't bothered silencing these now because it's quite, some of you have silenced yourself, which is good discipline. It's a relatively small group. We would have maybe 30 odd, but we let them chat. So it's like you would be coming into church. And again, at the end, we've got that freedom to chat. So that's how we do that. Are there any questions about this bit, about the setting up a meeting and so on? The other thing actually, which Graham didn't mention, is when you generate the meeting, it does actually generate an automatic email. I mean, he sort of showed you a bit of it, and obviously he strips out all the stuff to do with US phone numbers, which I do as well. But you can then send that email to whoever needs to have it. In our church, I don't have the distribution list, so I send it to the person who does, and then she distributes it to everybody. So again, I don't have to sort of contravene GDPR by doing the distribution to a list that I probably shouldn't have. So it's quite easy to do that. But any questions on that bit?
Just one question. I don't think it's arisen yet, and you may not know, but as you go through, you've mentioned the fact that, of course, some of us are using the free version, some of you are using the paid up version. So it's quite helpful to, if there are points when features are only in the paid version, to highlight that.
Sure. There's not a lot of difference between them apart from the time, as I understand it. There might be a few more tools in the paid one, but I've not. We haven't been using it long, so I'm not sure. What do you think, Graham? Is there a lot much in the new one?
I would say very, very little difference for the normal use. Few differences if you're going to do very specific things. But breakout rooms are all there. You can share your screen, etc., etc. So very little difference. And if people are happy to log back in, straight into the same meeting using the same login details as you've used for the first session, after 40 minutes, that's the only downside. Otherwise, it's a good discipline. Sort of forces you to think about keeping your sessions below 40 minutes, which is not always a bad practice anyway. So, yeah, I would definitely say don't waste your money if you don't need to. But I've paid for it as well, just because it gives you that extra amount of time. Yeah.
There's one other thing it does give you actually, which is if you're on the free one, if I press record, it will only record to my computer, which is fine at one level, but it's going to be a video file, so it's going to be big. What they point out is that if you press record on the other one, you have the option of recording to the cloud, which if you then want to distribute or to put onto a website is much, in one sense is slightly easier, but it's a relatively minor thing in my view. But there we are.
John, if you have the paid for version, does that mean that people who don't have the paid for version can also have a 1 hour plus meeting with you? They don't have to have a paid for version as well to have a longer meeting?
No, so only the host needs to have an account, and then as many people can join. If it's a one-to-one meeting, there's actually no limit on time either. So if I was to meet with you on Facebook, we could meet for as long as we wanted. It's only when you get to 3 people. It's like, just think COVID, 2 people's fine, 3 people's not allowed. Yeah. So it's sort of, that's where it changes.
Right, yeah. That's good, thanks.
Shall we go on to the next section? I mean, by all means, come back with more slides. So can I now share screen as Graham pressed that back to me? I think he has.
Yes, you're the host now.
So I will go to this PowerPoint. So I'm covering really managing a worship session and where are we? Managing a worship session and sharing screen. So I am sharing the screen as I go. I was going to, if I can find it. Sometimes there we go. I'm just going to get the pictures of people back. There we are, show video panel. It depends how you've got yours set up. There we are. I'll put those over there. Anyway, let me put more than them. So the slides that I've got here is I produce a crib sheet document. So I produce 2 documents. I actually send round a virtual service sheet to everyone in the church, because some people actually don't get onto the Zoom, but they can still actually use the basic service layout. And then I produce a second document, which has this at the top, which is kind of my checklist of things that I make sure I've done to set up the service. Some of them we've already talked about. But there are things in here like getting ready any YouTube clips, creating the PowerPoint that we use for our songs. It also talks about setting YouTube to cinema mode. I'll show you what that means in a moment. And then what I normally have on the right-hand side of my screen is not your little pictures. I have managed participants, because we do use a waiting room, which means that at the beginning of the service in particular, you need to be ready to let people in. So you've got to see that panel. So that's one thing that we try to do. Further down, whoops, I've gone too far now. Further down this document, you've got to bear in mind with our services, when I've
completely out of focus, those words.
Yeah.
Okay, they're a bit small, aren't they?
No, it's not legible.
Okay.
It looks like a barcode or a QR code or something almost.
It
Yeah.
looks fine on mine. Is that any
Yeah,
better?
they're fine on mine.
I know mine. Yeah.
It may depend what device you're on. So I'm on a PC or
I'm on
a laptop. Yeah, if you're on a smaller thing. Okay, well I will describe the document, but we'll also make sure the PowerPoint's available. All it basically is I've created a Word document which has on the right-hand side the same order of service I've sent out. And then on the left-hand smaller column has instructions, things like mute all, share screen, put the PowerPoint on, change from the view at the moment, which you've probably got, is of all the people's faces. But you can switch to something called speaker view, which on a PC is in the top right-hand corner. You can toggle between gallery view, which is everybody, and speaker view. And if you've got someone preaching, it's much better, or someone leading worship, it's much better to have speaker view, because otherwise, if somebody coughs, it disappears off from the speaker and goes to that person and then comes back, or somebody fidgets a lot or whatever it is. Zoom gets distracted very easily. So the reason I've got a document like this is that when I've been leading, and this is probably about to change, thankfully, is I've tended to be doing it pretty much on my Todd, which means I need to be fairly sharp with how I'm doing it as well as the content. So this just makes that easier, and was also easier for other people who lead. This screen is to show you what I just meant about, on the left-hand side, that's the screen with my video off. So that's effectively the pictures of the people. And then you'll see I've got participants. So this was one I was doing earlier, just on a trial meeting. And I'd recommend doing that if you've not used Zoom much, is just get Zoom out, start meeting, and then play with it. So that's what I was doing here. So I've got my content on this side, and then the people down the other side, which makes it very easy. And you can have things like chat as well down that side, which is quite helpful. When you get to the bit where it says share screen, when you click on that button, it will come up with something that looks like this, which is basically all the windows you've got open. It's actually slightly more than all the windows you've got open, because you'll see on there you've got a thing called whiteboard, which you won't even know you might have had, but it's something that Zoom says you can use. You can actually put a whiteboard up and draw on it. You've got iPhone or iPad. Well, I don't have one of those, so I don't know why it's on there really. And then it's got whatever documents I happen to have open at the time that I was producing this this PowerPoint. And what you do is simply go with your mouse to the thing that you want to bring up. So in this case, hopefully you can see my mouse moving. I don't know if you can or not. I'm over the PowerPoint, so I would click on that and then bring up that box. The other thing that's important to notice on this screen is down the bottom, there are two boxes to tick: share computer sound and optimize screen sharing for video clip. Whatever you're sharing on your screen, it's almost always worth clicking on those. You get much better sound and picture. But once you've clicked both of those and hit share, then that's what you will then see that thing shared. This is what a YouTube clip looks like when it's shared. So if I go back, you'll see that was one of the windows I had open. I could click on that and it would go to the YouTube clip. What I've tended to do with sharing screen is use about 2/3 of the screen for the sharing, and then had my managed participants, or as I've got now, the pictures of people down the right-hand side in a smaller space. Because it seems, iPads apart probably, it seems generally about right for people using that much of the screen for presentation, and it still means you're able to manage the other thing. I know that one of the people who's on here has been experimenting with using an extended desktop, you know, and doing the presentation on I've got a monitor attached to this, so I could do this. I could have all the presentational stuff on there and all the managing stuff on my laptop screen. I haven't played with that yet, but I can see that makes a lot of sense. Some people will use a full screen. I'm less confident doing that, because when you do that, it's much harder to find all the other tools. And then if you're trying to manage the event as well as do the presentation, sometimes you think, oh, I don't know where that's gone now. So I'm personally just more comfortable with this. When you use a YouTube clip, there's again, if you can see the mouse moving, it won't come up because this is just a picture, but there's a thing called theater mode. And if you click on that, it means that the YouTube clip will fill the space that you've put it into, rather than you having a tiny YouTube clip and then all the writing around it, which is very distracting for people. So I'd certainly recommend that. And the other thing, the reason I use YouTube clips is before we had live worship, it meant that we could use a song from there without infringing copyright issues. But the thing that you've got to watch out is that nearly all clips have adverts or pop-ups or whatever. So you need to go on and deal with them before the service, get the clip set up right, so that you haven't got all that kind of stuff bubbling up and distracting people. So it's a little bit of a skill. But what I would normally do in terms of the things that I want to share is get all my windows ready, and then I know, again, through my crib sheet, where I need to go at any given point in the service. One thing that I have discovered during doing this was I tried to have a PowerPoint for the beginning bit and then a song and then another PowerPoint. I've done away with that because you get so confused between all the different PowerPoints. And actually all you need is one, if you're going to use PowerPoint, all you need is one PowerPoint for the whole service structure. And then you just start at the slide you next need. And it's very easy because you're sharing it and then coming off. It's very easy to go back to the right point. And then you just bring in the songs and other content when you need them. So it's just a case of clicking on and off. That's showing, sharing the PowerPoint and a video in this case. Well, no, this is my PowerPoint and the participant list. This is showing the shared screen, and then what you've now got, which is the people next to it. Well, it's what I've got. I have to say, I don't actually know what you've got, because this is one of the weird things with Zoom. If you're the presenter, you always see what the presenter's doing. Have you all got a shared window and people down the side?
Yes.
You have. So you've
got you in the corner.
Right, okay. On a smaller device, you might just have a speaker. Now, that might be because you're on speaker view, or it might be something else. I'll show you what that is for those who don't know about it when I've got through these slides. That might be the last one, actually. Yes, it is. So when you've finished, you just go to stop share, and then that disappears, and you're back to, well, I've got a participant list and your lovely faces. Up at the top, so on a PC, in the top right-hand corner, mine says, if you look there, I don't know what yours are, I've got speaker view. If I click on that, oh, you'll get whoever's moved last. And then if I go to gallery view, we go back to all of us. So we tend to encourage people during services to go to speaker view for the worship leader, for anyone who's preaching, actually for anyone who's reading or doing the prayers as well. It's nice to actually just bring up their picture bigger. That's sort of worth doing. Any sort of questions on that bit? Oh, so there's one more thing to say, which I've forgotten to say. When I do the PowerPoint, you might create a PowerPoint and think, right, I'm going to do what John did. I'm going to use 2/3 of the screen. Then you hit begin presentation, boom, it goes full screen, because that's PowerPoint's default mode. It's caught me out before. What you need to do is go to a setting in PowerPoint on how to set up the slideshow. And let me just see what it's called. The fifth tab along is set up slideshow, and normally its default is presented by speaker full screen, but just below that is browsed by an individual, brackets window, and that's how you need to set it up if you don't want to go full screen, if you want to keep it in part of your screen. As I say, you might decide, like me, you've got a laptop with a second screen and you can go large with it and actually manage the other screen. But I realise that's more technical, it's more of a challenge, so I find it a challenge. But it's probably a more professional way of doing it. But if you find it goes full screen, that's what's happened. And if that's not what you wanted, you can just go back in, change the setting, save it and do it again, and you'll be fine.
What's the setting again? The setting button for that?
So it's set up slideshow is the setting on PowerPoint. Yeah. And it brings a drop-down menu, and then the second bullet point down, it says browsed by individual, small window in brackets. And that's effectively what this is. It's 2/3 of a screen is what I'm using. You can set the window, of course, to whatever size you like, but that's what I've done. I think Terry, who's on here, is talking about maybe doing half and half for one of his presentations and seeing whether that works. So you get a better picture of the person, but you still get enough space to see the content. But that's what I've gone for so far. This is when you've got two things on either side. This is what Zoom calls side-by-side mode, and it's very easy to select that in your settings so that you can have more than one thing up. But it sounds worse and worse, doesn't it? Really, as you think, well, I got side-by-side, and I got. But actually, it's fairly intuitive when you get into it. Maybe some of you have been doing it plenty anyway, but. That's really what I want to say on those two sections. Are there questions and things?
Can you sort of set up the PowerPoint with the video clip embedded in it? Well, no, you can't do that, can you? Or can you do that?
Well, it depends what the video is. So some of that will be around the licensing question. Okay. But I have embedded videos. I don't do it for songs. Although it's possible I might now be able to, because we've changed our CC license, so it may be that will be all right. I need to find out the answer to that. But what I've avoided doing it and actually simply gone to YouTube or whatever, because I know that's okay, and it's not that difficult to do. But it's I have used other videos, so like little bits of film or something like that, and just put them in the PowerPoint. The thing there to watch out for is if you I often create them on my home computer and then move them to the laptop. And unless you use if you use an older version, if you use an older compatible version of PowerPoint, sometimes it doesn't find them, which is a real pain. So you're safer to actually either use the most modern form or make sure you've got the clip on the laptop as well as the PowerPoint. Otherwise you press play and nothing happens, which is very frustrating. But yes, technically you can do it. It will work. It's more around licensing.
Okay, thank you.
In a sense, if you're sharing a PowerPoint, you can share anything on a PowerPoint that you would share in any other way in PowerPoint. Zoom works exactly the same, which is quite helpful. Anything else on that bit? Okay, I'll hand back to Graham. Do I need to enable you to be host again, or does it?
Yeah, please.
I nearly muted you by accident.
Well, that's
There you
okay.
go. Oh, you're on.
It'll just be a moment. Okay, so yeah, I was just going to say a little tip, nothing to do with this particular section, but if you mute everybody, you can also tell them, in most cases, you can just press the space bar, and that will allow you to unmute yourself temporarily, a bit like an intercom button, I suppose. So that's a handy little tip on occasions I've used. So this section is music, singing and praying. And I'll just go through a few tips, and again, you can ask any questions at the end of this section. So live music particularly does present some problems, not least with licensing. I won't go into that quite yet, but also audio settings. So if you have somebody that you think, oh, it'd be really good to ask them to sing or to play a song or whatever, then you can change the audio settings, even though it seems a little bit, it's not intuitive. Like, it doesn't say click here for better live music or anything like that. You just have to know. So I've watched a few videos on this, and the suggestion is that you change the audio settings for music, because what Zoom does, it compresses sound, it tries to cut out background noise, which is usually a good thing, but when you play music, it makes the music very poor quality and a little bit squashed and not very pleasant to listen to. Particularly if you're a musician, you've got a good ear, then you won't be very happy with what's going out of the speakers on the people who are listening. So you can adjust audio settings by clicking on that little arrow next to your mute button with the microphone in the bottom left corner. I've put a circle around it there. And there's audio settings that'll pop up right at the bottom of that. So if you click on that, that'll come up. And what you get with that is a few little options. So if you uncheck automatically adjust volume, that helps with music, and click on the advanced button at the bottom of that screen that you get in your audio settings screen. And you can disable, suppress persistent background noise and suppress intermittent background noise. I couldn't possibly go into any of the technical issues, not least you wouldn't be interested, but the main reason is I don't know nothing about technical noise issues. But leave echo cancellation, because that is fairly critical, because anybody who's still unmuted, you'll get an echo if you take that off. Other systems like Skype and Google Hangouts and what have you are not so good as Zoom at cutting out echo. But for music, you can do those two things, disable those two. And you might want somebody who's like moderating the meeting to go in and out. You know, if somebody's singing live, then you could put it on, change the settings, and change it back. But maybe something you're not too worried about, but I thought it was quite handy to have that understanding of what works and what doesn't work with music. Going on further, there are problems with delay. which you find out to your cost if you try to pray, say the Lord's Prayer together, or sing together with everybody not on mute. It might work maybe with one or two, but generally in my experience it sounds absolutely horrible, and everybody's stopping and starting and tripping over each other. So don't try singing or praying together, which is a horrible thing to say when you're meeting together on Zoom for church. However, you can still achieve that. You just have to do it in a different way. So mute everybody but the speaker, which is a setting on Zoom. Turn up the volume so that people maybe are not so self-conscious, perhaps. You might get people swearing at you because it's too loud, like John said, but you know, manage the volume as you see fit. Don't try to be too complicated with music. This is another point. You do see these fantastic presentations, don't you, where you've got somebody from this room and somebody else playing the guitar and playing the piano and somebody else singing in another room, and it's all fantastic and it works really well. But all that is they've asked people to record themselves, send them in, and they've edited it all together. If you try and achieve that live, you'll trip yourselves over terribly. But I would definitely recommend that if that's something you can pull off. Just get people to record themselves singing a song, you know, the worship team, if you have one of that, you know, or a choir, and you put those together. You have to edit the video, create one separate video, which you then just broadcast on Zoom, as John said about videos and sharing screen. Then that can be a fantastic way to make people feel more at home with people that they recognize as worship leaders in their church. Also use breakout rooms, because, you know, when you're trying to get people to pray together, you are trying to get people to share their prayers. They're not going to do it so easily in a room full of 15, 20, 30 people. So maybe reduce it down for them in 2s, 3s, 5s, or whatever you feel appropriate. And we'll go through breakout rooms in a moment. But we've used these and they work really well. People come out saying, oh, it's almost like being, in fact, some people have said it's better than church, because you do get that time with one or two people to chat. You can talk about the Bible study, the sermon, prayers, or whatever. So breakout rooms, you must enable it in your settings. It doesn't just happen by default. So what you do is you sign in to your browser. So when you go to download Zoom, it's like any website. You go to zoom.us, you log in with your login details if you have an account, and then if you're hosting a meeting, you have to have an account. Then you click on My Account in the top right. Then you go to Settings in a menu system on the left-hand side. Then there's a few tabs that you'll see. Go to Meeting. And then, I mean, you can either press In Meeting Advanced, which is a section, or you can just do a search, you know, like when you're searching on a web page for breakout rooms, or you can do it the old school way and just, you know, scroll down the hundreds of settings and find breakout rooms. But it's just a toggle switch, turn it on, and you will then get a lovely, satisfying breakout rooms button in your hosted meeting area. And you can see what it looks like there with this red circle around it. What happens then is you get the opportunity to do a number of things: automatically or manually put people into rooms, create the particular number of rooms you want. So if you've got 20 people, you might want 4 rooms or 5 rooms with 4 people in, or, you know, whatever. So decide how many people you want in each room and create the number of rooms to suit. You can set the duration. So if you want people to go away for 3 minutes to pray, 10 minutes to pray, set that duration. And you can also set a countdown, and it looks like this in practice. A countdown being 30 seconds or something, so that people know that their time is coming to an end and they're going to get booted out of their breakout room back into the main room. So when you click on breakout rooms, the button that appears when you get your setting right, you get those options, and you get the options of move all participants into breakout rooms automatically. That just means randomly. But if you want to socially manage that and put people in certain rooms with maybe leaders, Bible study leaders or whatever, you can put people manually into rooms. It doesn't take that long. I've done it with a quiz of about 30 people where I had the quiz team set up. It took about 2 minutes to do while somebody else did a bit of a chat. You set the breakout rooms. You can allow people to come back into the main room if they want. That might be important for you to be able to do that. Notify you when the time is up. So you get a little message to say, because you might go away, make a cup of tea, go to the toilet, come back while everybody's in breakout rooms. But it's just a little reminder to say, we're coming back into the room, look out. And a countdown of, say, 30 seconds to give people that opportunity. It's pretty good for the user. They get asked to join the breakout room, so they've got to click on join breakout room, but it's very obvious. They then get put into a room. You can visit that room as host to speak with them, and they can send you a message as well. Any of the users can send you a message as host to say, got a problem, we can't see what you put in the chat area, or we can't hear somebody, or somebody's disappeared. So you can go in the room, visit any of the rooms, and then leave any of the rooms in and out as you wish. Just a few points on using breakout rooms. Chat carries over. So if you put something in the chat area, like an order of service or whatever, or a prayer, list of things you want to pray for, then that chat area will go into the breakout room when they go in. Probably not on a mobile phone. I've found that doesn't work on a mobile phone, but certainly does on a laptop, desktop, computer. But screen share doesn't. So if you're sharing your screen, don't expect that to appear. You may have to then go in or ask a host of that breakout room to share their screen. Broadcast message on chat. So if you want to send a message to everybody, you can do that to all the breakout rooms if you happen to want to do that. And people can contact the host, as I say, and the host can visit each room. I was going to do a demo, but we haven't got breakout rooms set up on the PST account, I don't think. So that's fine. It probably saves a bit of, but it's a really nice experience. It really does work. I'd encourage you to use them, and it does give you that option of just more intimacy, an intimacy level that you don't get on meetings with a bit larger numbers. And that's the next session. So I'll stop sharing my screen. You can ask questions about that, and John can throw in any suggestions that he has.
Can I ask a question about the audio settings?
Of course.
Is it the host who does it, or does the person recording the music have to do it?
Yeah, if you've recorded the music, then then you'd probably do that separately anyway on whatever system that you're using to record that. If you're making a video or whatever, you might do it on your phone or whatever. So obviously it's up to the person recording the music just to sort out their own recording system. What I'm saying is, when you play music through Zoom, so you're playing a video or maybe a CD, or I'll come on to problems with CDs, then it's better. Or if people are, so if you say, right, I'm going over to somebody who's now going to play a song or sing a song live, then you would set up the settings on as a host, so that on the system, or you could ask a moderator, somebody who's doing that, a co-host, to be able to do that. But the person who's singing the music or playing the music shouldn't have to do that. That's up to you as the host, as you say.
They wouldn't have the controls, really. It's only hosts or co-hosts who would have the controls. I think the difference really is between live music and internet sourced music. So whenever I've played things off the internet, the only real problem is some people have found them too loud. Well, they can actually deal with that themselves simply by turning their laptop or their iPad down a bit. It's easily done.
Yeah.
But the sound has been clear. Whereas when we've had a live musician, I've experienced this myself as hearing it. Sometimes the guitar just cuts out. You know, you hear some chords and then it all goes. You think, oh, where's he gone? And I suspect then we haven't set up his sound right. And I know Terry's been looking at this. Terry is on this workshop. He's saying, I think we need to do this and this. So, and now I understand what he means because of what Graham said. And you think, oh yes, we do need to do that and that. And then maybe we'll hear the live sound really well. The other alternative is you could get your musician to record a song as a video and upload it to the internet. And as long as their recording equipment captures the song well, then it would be just like taking something off YouTube. So you'd probably have good sound, but it wouldn't be live. So it's kind of, there's you can do all those different ways, can't you?
That's exactly right, John. It's all about what is picked up on the speaker and pushed into Zoom. So it is a live music that I was talking about. Yeah.
You know, with the breakout rooms.
Yeah.
When you say you can do it automatically, does that mean that the Zoom selects which people go into which breakout room? Exactly.
It just saves you time. If you think, well, I'm not bothered who goes into which room, as long as it's roughly equal numbers, then it's a random selection and it decides who to put into which room. And that often will be fine.
Well. Yeah.
Yeah.
We haven't used that, but I like the sound of it for giving people the opportunity maybe to pray in 2s and 3s. Sounds good.
Yeah.
Or
Graham.
Sorry, go on, Terry.
This might sound awful, but before somebody joins a breakout room, can they see who's already been assigned to it?
No, they can't. And it doesn't sound awful. I do get what you're saying. You know, some people might not want to be in a room with somebody else. So I guess
what John said, it sounds interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, what we do with quizzes is we just say, right, this is the teams. And obviously, if anybody shouts up and say, I don't want to be in that, can I be in the team with my friend or whatever? It's like, yeah, fine, no problem. Or you could just ask, you know, who wants to be together in groups if they're doing a Bible study or whatever. But more often than not, you'll know people and you'll know the different relationships that they're having at the time. So, but no, they don't find out on a technical level. They don't know until they appear in the room.
Yeah. Can I just go back to live music? Me and Chris were trying this yesterday, actually. It was from a YouTube that I'd seen. Maybe you've seen the same. And I must admit, I did overlook setting or unsetting automatically adjust volume, but we didn't seem to find it was effective. Have you done it, or do you know somebody that has?
Play live music.
Yeah, with those settings and find it works, because we tried those settings and it didn't make that much difference.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a musician, so I can't really say that I have. I've watched videos on it because I needed to give people advice on this session, but also online on some materials that I was creating. So I couldn't guarantee it, but they were. I can send you the link to the video for the lady who was talking about this if you wish, and that might be more of convincing or whatever that it should work at least.
Yeah, I might have seen the same video actually. Yeah, sounds like I could well have done. Yeah,
maybe a more credible source than me should be telling you that. Yeah.
Again, with the breakout rooms, is the information discussed in each breakout room confidential to that room then?
Yeah, very much.
Great.
There's I mean, apart from the host, nobody else can pop into that room.
Yeah.
You can't get in.
Well, that's good, because I could use it perhaps in spiritual direction practice and stuff like that, you see.
Absolutely.
I'm looking further down the line for doing stuff like that.
Just a question occurs related to that. If you're recording the meeting, do the breakout rooms get recorded?
Well, it's a good question.
It's a good question.
I'm sort of assuming no, because I can't see how that would be possible. I'm assuming that it would be recording a sort of a blank screen at that point when you go into breakout rooms. So it's a very good point, but I can't see how it would be technically possible for that to. I mean, I guess you're asking that might be not a good thing because you don't want it recording.
So you at least want to know, but
Yeah.
I would have thought if you've got 3 or 4 rooms, it couldn't, because it would just record a cacophony unless it records each of them and then puts them in order. I guess the thing to do is to set up, like I said, play with it. Set up a thing where you go into a room and you shout something rude and then see what the recording comes out with. And if it's not on there, it worked pretty well. If it was, just destroy it.
I mean, I think how you need to think of it, in terms of you leaving and come back in, it is literally like a room. So I think if there's somebody in there who has the hosting rights or whatever, if there's somebody in that room, then they can record that room, I would have thought, separately. But when you are recording the Zoom meeting, in effect, you're recording what's going on in your room. But I suspect you could record other rooms if you needed to, separately as separate recordings.
I don't know. The other thing to say about live music is I came across an example of a church. It's actually our former vicar, Darren, who's now in Cheshire. And they had somebody playing the guitar in one place and a keyboard in another and a singer in another. And I thought, wow, this is amazing. How have they got the worship group to do that? And basically the answer is with a heck of a lot of work. So they're all using a metronome that's playing in their ear, in effect. And they're being incredibly disciplined with their music. And then somebody's doing a lot of editing and multi-layering to put the tracks together so that it comes out as a credible sound. And you're just thinking, no, that's just too much effort, really, for just get over yourselves and have one musician lead it as best they can. It's very, I'm impressed, but I couldn't spend the time doing that. It's a lot of work. And I've come across a few other people so basically the answer was there's no simple way to overcome the delays in Zoom to unite sounds. The only way you can do it is by getting all the tracks together and editing them digitally. You can use things like Audacity, which is a good free sound editing program, but it's quite a lot of work unless that's your line of work. If you work as a sound engineer, you probably do it in an hour or something. Well, fine, but which is a shame. It would be nice, wouldn't it, to have really lovely sound from our own musicians, but it's quite hard to do. The other thing which we're wondering about with ours is Dan, who has been trying to play for us, is talking about getting a better microphone, and it is possible that will make a difference, but I don't know yet. Anything else on that bit? I think it's Graham, otherwise again to carry on to the next section.
Well, the next section...
Leave the room.
Pardon?
I'm going to have to leave. Thank
Okay.
you.
Yeah, sorry, we've gone over 3. We'll certainly be done by another quarter of an hour or so, but by all means, go if you need to.
Okay, bye.
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 Okay, so have I still got hosting rights?
I think you have. I haven't transferred it.
Okay, so I'm just going on to licensing issues. Hopefully not too boring, but we'll see what we've got here. And then again, it seems to throw up a lot of questions with a lot of people about different things. I mean, this just covers the scope of Zoom. There are loads of other licensing issues, which if we've got time, you can tell me to, you ask me to go into those other things, but I'm just trying to keep the scope to Zoom, using Zoom. So the question is, are you using any copyrighted materials? If you're not, don't worry about your license. You don't need one. If you are, then you probably do. But again, even then, it depends on the sort of meeting that you're having. So public Zoom. So if you are if it's a bit like a church service, I suppose that's the best way to think about it. Then with copyright materials like you're singing songs and not so much reading the Bible, I think you're covered on that. But if you're singing songs and you're presenting, let's call them lyrics, words, or whatever to people, then you must use let's say a CCLI license, which every church probably has. But you also need a streaming add-on, and the PRS license, or what's called an LOML, which is Limited Online Music License, is available if you are singing live worship, in effect performing live worship across Zoom. If you are doing that on YouTube and Facebook Live, like some churches are doing, then that's okay. You don't need the PRS element of that, but you still need the CCLI and streaming add-on. That's because YouTube and Facebook have license already built into their accounts. If you have an account, then you're covered for public performance on their platforms. We've said that. Closed meetings. So imagine the difference between a church service and a meeting in somebody's home for 5, 10, 15 people, that sort of thing. If it's a closed meeting where you know everybody who's coming in, it's not public, people haven't got people are just joining with passwords and meeting IDs that you've sent out, then it's not really regarded as a public meeting. And so you don't need any licensing. You don't need to worry about what you do in that meeting within other legal reason. But then you're fine. You don't need a license for that. But we'd always throw in, you should check with CCLI just in case we're giving you bad advice. We're not lawyers and we don't work for CCLI. I mean, CCLI itself really only covers a finite number of songs. But you can check those songs on something like something called Song Select. And that, I say a finite number, but it is a huge finite number. Most songs that you'll sing in worship will be covered on the CCLI license and Song Select. So you can check out whether it is or not if you want to. But things like Teze isn't covered under CCLI that I know of, but that is covered on something called One License. So I think the way you have to think of it is, with a CCLI license, they've gone to loads and loads of publishers and artists and said, do you want to come into our scheme? And they've said yes. Some haven't, and they've gone to other schemes. And so with CCLI, when you get a license, you're covered for those artists and those publishers, of which there are a huge number. But it doesn't necessarily mean that everything that you broadcast over Zoom, over YouTube or whatever is covered under CCLI. So it's probably worth checking your playlist to see whether that's covered or not. There are other things that I could talk about. Let me just point out a few things as I'm talking about licensing. There are things, rights-free music. So, can you play music without this LOML, limited online music license? Yes, you can. But again, it might be limited. Like you can't grab any music CD and play it. But there are things you can do. Cornerstone, iSing, RSCM, and there's something else, St. Martin's in the Fields. They've been promoted by Church of England and people that I know to say that they are rights-free music. They've waived the rights in effect to be able to play those in worship services online. There might be a cost involved in doing so, like I think there is with Cornerstone and iSing. I'm not sure, but yeah, at least you're not going to get done for breach of copyright or whatever. And the other thing, YouTube videos, like John was saying, that's fine to share those, but I would generally say make sure those YouTube videos are from an official channel if you can, because obviously people might rip off somebody's song, put it on a YouTube channel, you don't know about it. It's probably not that illegal, in that the person who's put it up on YouTube is more at fault than you. But in order to be, I suppose, just really on it, on the ball and not breaching any copyright, then go to an official channel, which you should be able to tell which the official channels are, which aren't. I'm going to shut up on that licensing, but please ask any questions.
I think that's helpful, Graham. It's as you say, it's mainly Teze that are not covered by the CCLI. It is a massive list of songs. I was checking the ones that we're using for the Beacon service just to make sure they were all on there, and they are, and there's quite a wide range. One of the advantages you've got with some of the rights-free ones is you've got people who have recorded fairly traditional, popular traditional hymns, where the hymns now are so old, there's no copyright on the actual music, but there is usually copyright on any version of it you might use, because that's played by a musician. So you need somebody who's saying, I'm waiving my rights to that, you can use this, and it's an old trad hymn, which are quite often you want those sorts of things for certain things. So they're perfect. The YouTube, occasionally you will find I was going to use a version of a song in a service, and somebody sent me an email a day or two before saying, you do realise that one's been removed. So YouTube kind of policed their ones. Now there were loads of other versions, so I just taken a link which wasn't probably the best one to use, so I just used a different one. That was fine. And sometimes people they don't remove them because it's copyright. They've just decided they don't want that version on there anymore. It might be the person who wrote it decided to take that down. They've done something better. So you can usually tell whether something on YouTube is okay or not, because it will disappear if it isn't. It's always a tricky area, isn't it? I like to use film clips and things when I'm preaching. Now, technically, that's totally illegal, because if you look at the film, it will say you should only show the whole of this film, and you shouldn't show the whole of this film anyway. Well, I don't want to show the whole of the film to make a point about one scene. But it's about proportion and use. I'm not using it for any material gain. I'm using it for educational purposes, which is a wonderful gift of a phrase. And to be honest, people are very unlikely to do you for that. So it's sort of, I think it's about being sensible with things. I'm not using it to denigrate the film. I'd never use a film in that way. I'd only use a positive, well, I might use a negative example, but I'd only use the film to make a point that was worth making. My little confession. Anything else on any of that?
Are you going to cover recording services later, or can I ask a question on that now?
Do ask that.
There's a recording button somewhere, yeah?
Yeah, so we're recording this. I've never done it before, so this is, you're testing my limits.
Okay, so we press record, and then does it save it as a video file somewhere?
Yes, it says that if you've got an account, it will save it for you on the cloud, wherever that is. And if haven't, if it's yours, it will save it to your computer. Presumably it will tell you where it saved it in either case.
And if you want people to view it later, how do you direct them to that?
Now that I don't know. Terry knows. Here we are. Go on. You're silent, Terry. Unmute yourself. I'll unmute you.
Yeah, I'm okay. Yeah. Me and Chris had a little play with that. And what it did, it sent an email to the license holder, because we got a pro license.
Yeah.
And there's a link in there to a website somewhere. So you just click on the link and it plays the video.
Right.
So you send the link to whoever. Yeah.
Yeah. They send an email to the license holder, which is not me in our case, but she just let me know that it was there. There is a bit of a delay. Then how you actually then get that video and say produce a MP4 out of it or something like that to distribute, I'm not yet sure. Don't know.
Has anybody else done that? I have seen examples. So if you go on to St John's Overton's website, they use Zoom for their services, but then they put out the recorded output on their website. I'm pretty sure it's Will Goworth, the youth worker, who does all the techie stuff for them. So if you were to talk to Will, he would probably be able to tell you how he edits it. Because basically, I think, what's her name? Assistant priest there.
Joy French?
Joy French. I think Joy French leads the services, but Will does all the techie stuff in the background. And so I've watched part of their service, which is well done. They have different people contributing from different places. And then they obviously put it up. The reason I hadn't gone down that line with our services, well, as I said, was partly because we were still feeling our way. And you think, well, I think I'd probably want to do quite a lot of editing before I showed this to anybody else. You know, it's all very lovely and homely for those of us who were there, but if you weren't there, you don't appreciate the where's this button gone bit. You know, it's sort of whereas, or indeed the people coming in who don't know they're not muted. But the main reason I didn't otherwise put it up was I wasn't quite sure about the licensing rules. It's fine when you're doing it there and then, but so if I play a YouTube video, but then it ends up on my recording, what does that mean? I was trying to get my head around that. I think we probably now have the licenses in place to be okay if we were to put that, say, on our Facebook page, but I wasn't confident we had that before, so I'd avoided it.
Would that work if you put it on a YouTube channel? So you've recorded it as an MP4 and then you show it, but it includes recording of YouTube video clips.
What do you think, Graham, on that? Or
yeah, that's all fine. When I think you get options, don't you? You get the option to record on the cloud or computer. So if you record on your own computer, you get an MP4, which you can then put up on YouTube, on your YouTube channel if you have one, or share it in whatever other ways that you share videos.
Yeah, I was asking about the licensing implications of if you've put a recorded Zoom on, which has included YouTube clips when you were recording it.
That's fine.
Then you put it out again. Is that?
It's fine. Yeah, it's covered by, as long as you're covered with your streaming license. So you've got a CCLI license and then you have a streaming add-on. And it's all, the price of which is dictated by the size of your average congregation. Then you're covered to show and stream your own material plus anything that you have on that Zoom meeting as well.
Is that okay, Stephen? That sounds all right, doesn't it? It's about having the right licenses in place, and then you're confident you're okay.
Just to be clear about it.
Sorry.
But just to be clear about that, you could do a Zoom meeting using YouTube clips without a CCL streaming license, if I understood what you said correctly.
Yes, I think so, yeah.
But if you then were wanting to upload it, you would have to have the
You'd
CCL
need the streaming
license to do, which I think was what you were saying is why you hadn't done it till now.
But don't YouTube have some other licensing issues? Because I did a test video which I just used a commercial music clip in the test just to see whether I could do it and put it on the YouTube, and it was taken down by YouTube because I was in breach of copyright and the holder didn't want me to use it.
Yeah, that's right. But you can check that by going into YouTube Library. You're getting a bit technical, but there's a YouTube audio library which has just a bunch of copyright-free, royalty-free music and sound effects. But there are also lists of like if you look up a track, let's say something by Elton John, it would say you cannot use that music on YouTube, not allowed, and you get a red flag if you do. Others say you can use it, but it'll be monetized. So you won't get a red flag from YouTube, it won't be taken down. It will be allowed, but by monetized, we mean that adverts will pop up halfway through your video if you use it, that sort of thing. So yes, there are other implications on using YouTube music.
It may be just one thing to throw in generally on the whole licensing thing. We've been having fun working out the licensing for the Beacon event. Now we have finally got there, I think. But what was interesting is LJ Buxton, our comms person, talked with all the national comms advisors. She asked the question, how do we do this? And basically there was a, so someone else will answer, I'm sure, kind of response. And you think, basically the answer was, it wasn't that simple. And in the end, we set Graham on it because he's very good at researching things and he managed to find out the answer. But it was, you know, people were going, well, it could be this or it could be that. And the whole area is tricky. And suddenly as churches, we've woken up to this is the only way we can run services at the moment. So we say, how do we do this? And people go, ooh, not sure. And you think, well, that's not very helpful. But I think we're getting there.
The Church of England do have quite a lot of advice on their COVID-19 page. That's the top question about streaming services. So go on there and it gives you advice. We've also got them on our St. Peter's Church at Home series pages. And they are vague to a certain extent. And the coverall is you should check with CCLI, which is our coverall as well.
They are quite helpful if you ring them up, I'm told.
And they are very helpful if you ring CCLI up directly.
Janet? Are you heading off, Janet?
Yeah, I've got something I have to deal with imminently.
That's
and then I've got another meeting at past, so
okay.
I'll see you later.
Bye, thank you.
I think we're probably wrapping up anyway. Are there any final questions? Would people like the notes and things from today and the PowerPoints?
Yes, please.
Try and get those round.
I mean, I could possibly share it.
Yeah, you've still got
as a file, but maybe easier to email it out. I don't know what you think, John.
Yeah, maybe easier to email, then I can send you mine. I think you've had emails in from most people. Yeah,
I have, yes. I've got all the email addresses from the people who came through St. Peter's inquiry.
And I can do the Bramley one.
So what that does, what that's got on is, I mean, I'm not showing my screen, but it's got these notes on which we've put together for the sessions, including some things that we didn't cover, very few things that we didn't cover. All of the PowerPoint slides, including some that we didn't share, and John's PowerPoint slides as well.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Sounds good.
Well, thank you for joining us. And so we're finding our way just as much as you are, really, probably. It seems to work. And I'm still finding new or other platforms that people use. So I contacted a church yesterday who are using something I hadn't heard before. And I was talking to somebody else, and they say, "Oh, we use something called Be Live." I haven't seen that anywhere else. So there are people playing with all sorts of things, and we're sort of keeping our ear to the ground and then following these things up, because if we find any things that are better, we'll let people know. But at the moment, for interaction, Zoom seems about as good as anything. You can do a slicker presentation on YouTube or Facebook or whatever by creating your own videos, but there's no interaction. It swings and roundabouts, really. There is a thing called Church Service Planner, which you'll see some examples of that if you go onto the evening worship things through Thy Kingdom Come. I'm the very first one on Ascension Day. I shall use that. And what that is effectively it produces a service sheet online. You just work your way through it, but you can put in videos and links to songs and things. Now you can actually use that to link into a Zoom session at the end. I've not done that yet because the danger, it seems to me, slightly in that is the thing we talked about at the beginning, which is that you're putting up something public, which gives people an avenue into a Zoom, which is more normally a bit private. So I'm not quite sure about whether I'd want to go down that line, but it's an interesting combination of the two. It's a free, well, it can be free. We're going to pay for ours actually now to get a better sort of branding, but it's a free resource that's quite sophisticated and quite simple to use. So, but it was in one of the newsletters we sent out, PST.
Yeah, I had a brief look at that. Yes, yeah.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much for joining us. As I say, it's been good to.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If you try doing things and come unstuck, then feel free to send an email to Graham or me, and we'll see if we can help.
Thank you very much.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye now.
Bye.
John?
Yeah.
Well, not a private word, a quick word about Thy Kingdom Come and
Yeah.
the Beacon event. I tried to sign in for that on the Eventbrite last night, and 3 times I got thrown out before I finished the form. I don't know if it's something I was doing or if anyone else has come across that problem.
Were you signing in for ours? Because you only have to put your name in and your postcode.
Yes, that link that you put in the email, I went on that. Perhaps I'll try again with Chris side of me.
Yeah, okay. Not sure about that one.
Just thought I'd mention it, that was all. I didn't know if anybody else might have experienced it, but
I think it's only Bramley left.
I think we've got that kind of reputation.
Are you getting sorted for Sunday, Chris? I saw there was an email coming from you just before this. I haven't had a chance to read yet. Not Chris, Terry, I mean. Don't worry.
Hopefully then, John.
Panicking. He's preaching week on Sunday.
Have you had songs from Dan or not in the end?
I mentioned it in the email, actually. I have been in touch. He's going to experiment with this live music business.
Right.
And also he said he'd got this afternoon down to think about songs.
Right.
So they're imminent, hopefully.
Brilliant. Okay, that's good.
I've done the rest of the Zion work, so I'm all ready to go for Sunday, really.
Brilliant. Okay, so I don't need to do anything in terms of a PowerPoint or whatever. You'll run that, will you?
Only as backup, as we discussed.
Bacon, butty, and then turn up.
Yeah. but you'll have the so you'll need to send me the PowerPoint as well then, won't you? Because you've been finalising it, haven't you?
Yeah, I mean, if you've got time, we can, not now necessarily, I can just connect with you and just run through everything I've got on Zionworks. So you can see what it's going to come like, because it's all in a Zionworks file. I could send you the individual PowerPoints.
Right.
You know, you said I'd have to split them up into little bits.
Yeah.
But I've done that.
Yeah.
And then put them all into the Zionworks presentation.
I mean, I think I haven't got Zionworks on either of my machines. So I think it's going to make most sense if, in terms of share screen, if you like, if you share your Zionworks screen, the order of service all the way through. So I don't really need it in that case.
Yeah, that's right. As I was saying, but if my internet link packs in, it'd be good to have you as a backup.
Yeah, it might be useful if I've got the PowerPoints, that's true.
Yeah, but you've got them in the format you would use, in one big PowerPoint.
Yeah, I suppose, sort of.
And really, that's what a Zionworks playlist is.
Yeah.
Just like having them all in one big PowerPoint file, really.
I suppose so, yes, that's true.
Who's actually leading Sunday then, officially? Who's
John. I think it's me.
You're leading, John, and you're the techie guy.
Yeah. So I'll say the words and Terry will stick them on the screen.
A bit like me and Chris were doing supposedly last week.
Yeah.
Didn't quite work.
I mean, I think we talked today about I think Graham was saying, if you can have someone doing the techie stuff and someone doing the presenting and somebody doing the preaching, is so much better.
I think so.
But we hadn't been in that position up to now, so it'd been a case of where you just muddle through and do the best you can. But that's great if with you being able to do that now, Terry, for some of them, and obviously with you two, when you do it together, you can do that a bit as well, which is great.
In theory.
In theory.
Husband and wife working together and all that.
But it's just having another pair of hands, isn't it? And having somebody to look at the other bits and all that sort of thing is.
Yeah.
No, you wouldn't have that
What I
confidence
found.
to sign into HSBC this morning.
Sorry, Terry, you're going to say what you found?
Yeah, I'll just say it. I've already done the one for the 7th of June with Alan Taylor leading. And so we just went through it right from beginning to end. And what I found was while Alan's focusing on the next bit of the element of the service coming up, I were able to busily cue the next slide. Stuff like that. I can't imagine how you managed to do it, John.
Yeah. Well, it's partly by having two computers.
Well, Alan was kind of simulating leading the service.
Yeah, it's partly by having two computers. So I have my crib sheet over here, and then so I'm often looking that way. But but when I preached, I got my tablet here, so I was much more then able to look in the right direction. But yeah, it's an interesting challenge. I almost not bothered with PowerPoints for the sermon because you've got to do the two then. But you think, no, I like PowerPoints for the sermon, so I'm still going to do it. It's harder, but it's. I think now what I would do is, I mean, at the moment we're all right because we're all on here. I've got my managed participants over here, but I will tend now to have the people over there. That's much better. Were you doing 50-50 on your screen? Did that work with the PowerPoint and the people?
Are you talking to me?
No, Terry. Terry was talking about doing side by side and half, weren't you?
Yeah, I feel so. It suits me. I've been doing this when we've been coming onto the services anyway. Basically, what you do is you just split the screen into two. And then for some things, let's say there's lots of text on the screen share. Let's say it's words of songs. You might make that a bit bigger, and down will be a bit smaller.
Yeah.
But when it's a screen that just says the readings are blah, blah, which is not changing much, then I'd make the speaker a bit bigger.
Yeah.
It's like, just, and then it's something where each user, if they're educated to use it, can customize it really to their preference.
It'd be interesting to play about with the chat, with the rooms, wouldn't it? The separate breakout rooms, coffee time or something, as it were, afterwards.
Yeah, it's how you split them up that's the interesting
well, I think although if you do it randomly, then you can say, look, there's no engineering here. We've just let Zoom split us into three. It might have done it in terms of the order you signed in. We've no idea how it does it.
I think God instigated.
Pardon?
God instigated, Holy Spirit led.
I've got something against splitting up into little groups.
Right.
It's probably because it's Spring Harvest and you always get the really intense one with a jump with a big cross on the top of the front.
But
it occurs to me.
That's about it, well,
Go on, Terry.
Well, one thing that occurred to me is like, for something like prayer after the service, you could create a breakout room with two known and trusted prayers in it. And then create 2 or 3 of those. And if anybody else wants prayer, they could be put into that breakout room.
Yeah.
And if that's something you might think is valuable.
All right.